Добрый день, я Тина Канделаки. У меня в руках книга, про которую я вам так много говорила. Это книга Венди Сузуки «Странная девочка, которая влюбилась в мозг». Количество закладок видите, понимаете, как эту книгу я внимательно перепрочитала, можно уже сказать. И я, конечно, счастлива. Для меня это уникальная возможность встретиться с Венди Сузуки, с профессором нейробиологии, которая сегодня здесь, в Москве. Hello, Wendy.
Hello.
Examination and analysis of people doing sports, outdoor sports. You are a proponent of the theory that people doing sports live longer. I hope so, guys. They have less diseases. They are less commonly subject to cognitive disorders like Alzheimer disease, and even those who suffer Alzheimer feel much better.
Yeah.
Is this true? Tell me about this, please, because I wrote a lot of things about this in your book, Wendy.
Yes,
it was so interesting that. Are they really these people? I mean, they say from this disease who are doing a lot of sport.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing to say is that physical activity will not cure Alzheimer's or dementia or any other kind of dementia. What it does is it helps protect your brain because it strengthens two key brain areas that we know are first attacked in Alzheimer's and general dementia, the prefrontal cortex and the hippocampus. So you're basically strengthening these brain areas. So even if you do have the disease, it takes longer for the disease to damage enough of these brain areas. So you start to demonstrate the memory problems, all of the typical problems that you see in dementia and Alzheimer's disease.
It depends if the patient's doing a sport since the youngest ages, or you can start anytime in your life, and it again helps you and makes protection.
Yeah, that's a great question. And the answer is that anytime you start, you can benefit. So there are studies showing that even people that have early stage dementia benefit from starting exercise, even though they've never exercised regularly before. But of course, if you've exercised all of your life, you build up that brain strength and particularly the strength in these two brain areas that are susceptible for aging for a longer period of time. So that basically will protect you longer. I wanted to bring up a very recent study that I think really illustrates this beautifully. It was published in 2018 and it focused on Swedish women. So back in 1969, they interviewed several hundred Swedish women, and they characterized them as either low fit, mid fit, or high fit. They were middle-aged, they were about 40. Then they followed up 44 years later. They were in their 80s, and they found that the high fit women were 90% less likely to have developed dementia. And that is so inspiring for me because it kind of gives the upper bound. Again, even this doesn't say that it's a cure. It's that protection. These were middle-aged women. They were high fit at middle age. We don't know exactly what happened to them between middle age and when they were in their 80s, but in the 80s, they were 90% less likely to have dementia. So this, to me, is such inspiring evidence that what you do with your body every day, starting at least when you're middle-aged, and you can imagine, starting when you're young, that is a wonderful protection for the rest of your life.
What a brilliant words, because I am in my 40s now, and we're thinking that this dementia thing, this Alzheimer thing, it never happens with us.
Yeah.
It's some stories about other people, and we will be always 40 years old, but then it happens one
then
day
it happens.
You are growing up and you become older and older.
Yeah, and it happens to everybody. I mean, even if you might not have it in your family, I'm sure you know somebody who has Alzheimer's in their family. My father had Alzheimer's disease. I know it's in my genes, which is another motivation to be as active as possible.
You're doing sport every day.
Yeah, I'm active every day. Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
What exactly are you doing?
So what I decided to do, I've evolved my activity. And so I realized that I love to do my sport at the beginning of the day. And no matter what, I do between 10 minutes. Even if I have a little time, I do 10 minutes all the way up to 45 minutes, depending on how much time I have. And I do online physical activity. So I take the classes online. So I can choose the class that I want. 10-minute course, 30-minute course, 45-minute course. And if I do it every day and force myself, even for the 10 minutes, I feel like I've really gotten much more, it's a stronger habit now, even than before. I had a great habit before, so.
Like a neurobiologist, you exactly know that it's important to build the habit.
Yes,
and it's the most
so
difficult
important.
thing to build it.
Yes.
Because, it's always, I'm lazy.
I know,
Not
yeah.
today, maybe tomorrow.
Not today, but yeah.
This 10 minutes course, because everybody are curious about this and everybody interested. When I'm showing my Instagram every day, people saying, oh, come on, you are doing this since 20 years and you can do it because it's part of your routine. I can do it. I can stand this 30 minutes, 1 hour, more than 1 hour.
Yeah.
And 10 minutes, I think that everybody can do 10 minutes.
Absolutely, everybody.
What you offer to do our Russian audience since these 10 minutes? It's a meditation, it's aerobics.
Yeah, I mean, my favorite one, and this is just because this is what I like, is dance is always fun.
In the morning.
So, yeah. So first thing in the morning, well, I'm trying to think of something that's fun for people that don't necessarily like to move. Find your song that you love that makes you want to dance. I don't know, Bruno Mars. I love Bruno Mars. So a song is about 4 minutes. So take 2 songs, two of your favorite songs, 2 Bruno Mars songs, and just dance to them in the morning. And that is a great about 10-minute workout. It's fun. You've chosen the songs. You know the ones that make you move, and make it fun. Make it spontaneous. Dance with somebody else. Dance with your kids. Dance with your husband.
You're an unbelievable person. You are so optimistic. You have so much energy that inspires people. Yeah. If we weren't since the interview, I should get up and doing my exercises.
Yeah. Well, I just got to do exercise with everybody in the
Intensati, because
Yes.
I know about Intensati.
Yeah.
Because I wrote your book. You
Yes,
see.
thank
I
you.
was reading it so carefully, and this Intensati.
Yeah.
It's course of yours. Yeah, you created it.
I did not create it. No, it's a fantastic fitness instructor in New York City. Her name is Patricia Moreno, and she's the one, the genius that came up with combining physical activity with positive spoken affirmations. And this was the form of activity that I did that kept me coming back to the gym. I might not have, continued, but I loved that workout. It made me feel so great. And because I know that Tony Robbins was here recently well, I know that Patricia Moreno came up with this workout after going to a Tony Robbins workshop live.
Are you serious?
No.
Because everybody was asking me what it means when he shaked his hands. He was stopped. Yeah. It was like his performance since, took 5 or 4 hours. I don't remember.
Yeah.
But it was long time.
Yeah.
And since the performance in every maybe 15, 30 minutes depends on the part of performance, he was stopped and shaking his hands like this. Yeah. I was curious what it means, why he's shaking his hand.
Yeah, I don't know about that. But it came, the development of Intensati came from one of those workouts where, he's so inspiring, and you don't know what new piece of creativity will come from all these beautiful people coming to his workshops and getting inspired by movement. He has a lot of movement, as everybody at Synergy experienced. And so she put it together in this amazing way that I found so inspiring. And so I became an Intensati instructor. And so now I get to share it with people all over the world, including with the audience out there. And so I love it. I really love it.
For a long time, before mid-90s, scientists believed that after a human being reaches adulthood, new neurons are no longer generated in our brain.
Yes.
1370, several, maybe 2 Boston University scientists, I don't know, published some research providing that these cells are generated in the brain of an adult rat. What's your opinion about this? How it happens? Is this true? Can we build the new neurons in our brain?
Yeah.
Because it's everybody trying to be young. In the modern world,
Right.
as a woman, you understand me. Everybody doing injection, plastic surgery, but nothing helps if you don't have your own new neurons.
Yes, exactly.
What about this experiment? Are you believing this? And can humans believe their own new neurons after adulthood?
Yeah, so I think it's absolutely clear that in rats, there's definitely brand new neurons born in adulthood, and there's strong evidence that physical activity in rats, and for rats it's running in those running wheels, that stimulates the birth. It makes more neurons grow and be born, and it also allows more of those newly born neurons to survive because many of them die. But when those rats are running in the running wheel, more of them survive and integrate into the hippocampus. They become functional brain cells.
Wendy, explain me. You mean that when these neurons born and then they die very quickly, but if you're doing sport, the speed of the death going down. That's a point, or how it happens?
Yeah. So a lot of the new neurons, in fact, neurons die all the time, but certainly a lot of these brand new neurons born in the hippocampus are dying. And so why don't they die if you exercise? They don't die because exercise is stimulating what's called a growth factor that stimulates the brain. It's basically bathing the hippocampus in this growth factor that allows these brand new neurons the nourishment to live and integrate and become part of the circuit that we need to form new long-term memories. And that's why the rat's hippocampus, they work better. And in humans, it's absolutely clear that older people absolutely have brand new neurons being born in their hippocampus. So there was evidence by a colleague of mine, Fred Gage, who was at the Salk Institute, showing that definitively. We're still working on the direct evidence that exercise can stimulate more brand new neurons to be born. But what we absolutely know is, as I mentioned in that previous study, long-term exercise is protecting your brain from dementia. Dementia damages cells in the hippocampus. It's not the only brain area, but...
От создателей самых больших бизнес-форумов в мире. Школа бизнеса, где читают лекции ведущие спикеры мира. Синергия представляет. Программа для первых лиц Synergy Executive MBA. 14 модулей по трансформации бизнеса и кратному увеличению прибыли. Выездные модули: Нью-Йорк, Лондон, Дубай. Экскурсии в компании Fortune 500. Встречи с владельцами крупнейших корпораций. Поступайте на программу Executive MBA в школу бизнеса Синергия. Подробности на synergy.mba.
Okay, but then everybody interested in their 40s, how they can become stronger. And in that case, can physical training change our brain?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Everybody wants to be more effective in this world.
Yeah.
And how it works, explain me, please.
Yeah, so that's a great question. The way it works is that one of the magical things that physical activity does is it stimulates basically a wonderful growing environment for the brain, including those growth factors that I just mentioned. There's a whole bunch of them. One of them that's really important is called brain-derived neurotrophic factor. You are providing more of those factors for the entire brain. You're also stimulating new blood vessels to be born. Now that is very important as well because the brain is the #1 user of oxygen of the entire body. And so the more blood vessels you have, the more efficiently your circulatory system can get oxygenated blood to your brain, basically making your brain work better as well. You get that core kind of nutrient that the brain needs, which is oxygen. So what you're doing is creating an environment with exercise in your 40s. You know, everybody wants a better brain. You are creating, I call it a neurochemical bath. You're creating a neurochemical bath that really nourishes brain growth and brain performance every single time you are working out. And in the long term, if you do this for a long time, you're basically continuously having the most positive growth centered bath of your brain.
Tell me about this, because we in our 40s, we starting to feel some depression. Every woman in the world.
Yeah.
But I'm seeing you and you're saying, like in this book, you're incredibly optimistic. And that's why you start to do physical exercises and change your brain. You become so optimistic. Or
I was very pessimistic before I started exercise.
You kidding me?
I think naturally I am optimistic. But as I say, I was at a very bad period of my life when I started physical activity. I had gained 25 pounds. I was doing well in lab, but it was very intense, and I was not very happy. I didn't have any friends outside of the lab because I was focused so much on being successful. And that's part of what drew me so much to even that first exercise class that I went to. I could immediately feel my mood lift. I felt better. It's like finally I could not focus on work. I felt good in my own body after a long time of just ignoring my body. And I was very sensitive to that. It turns out I moved towards that. I kept going to the classes over and over to get that, immediate high that you get. And I think it has made me even more optimistic than I am, because I saw how much it could change my brain, it changed my life, it made me happier, it made me more productive.
But you were always productive. You know languages, you were...
Yes.
Yeah, you were so successful. And in your case, your case, it's always what improved? Explain me.
Yeah. What improved is that I can guarantee you that I am so much happier now. I was successful before because all I did was follow the rules. What do you have to do to become a tenured professor? Well, you just work 100% of the time, work more than anybody else, and you'll probably make it. I tried that, and I became completely unbalanced because I didn't leave any other time to do anything else to nourish any other parts of my brain besides the part that was a scientist. And so today, yes, I work hard, I'm successful there, but I enjoy it even more, because I balance with other things, including coming to Russia and being able to enjoy some of the things here and all the other trips that I get to give. But I also have many more good friends, and you have to have time to establish those friendships.
I have to ask you, because everybody who read this book, they know that till you start to change your brain, start to do physical exercises, you started to meet with some persons.
Yes.
Yeah. And in the book, finally, you didn't say how it finished. Are you getting married or what happens? Because it was so interesting. Your last story about this French guy was unbelievable and so sweet. But, it wasn't optimistic because finally you split off.
Yes.
And I'm not going to ask you this private question, are you married or something like this, but actually it makes some influence on your private life, finally, these changes.
So I'm going to tell you a story that I've never told anybody before. It's the continuation of the story with Francois. And so we left it that I called him to thank him for all of the beautiful time that I had when I was a junior in college. But what I wasn't able to say in the book is that my book was sold in France, and they flew me to Paris to be able to interview and promote the book. And of course, I went
him.
I went back 30 years later. I went to Bordeaux to see Francois again. And we had a lovely, day and a half before I had to go to Paris and do all the things. But it was lovely meeting him. It wasn't, we didn't go off into the sunset and get married, but it was lovely to see somebody that I really cared for so many years ago and check in with him. And I feel like it was a very lovely, healthy way to just say thank you and how are you in person. So that's what
it's like in movies, you're telling this so wonderful story. You didn't think that it was a wrong decision to split off with him?
No, I thought it was the right decision to split off with him. And I think that we were absolutely going in different directions as we did. Doesn't mean that I didn't have a wonderful time and it was a wonderful experience. And that I loved seeing him again 30 years later. I mean, how many people get to go and visit their first love 30 years later? So that was great. And I enjoy, lots of wonderful relationships like that in my life right now. So.
Thank you. It's a very good example for the women who are watching us because it's always difficult to come back to your love, to your first love.
Yeah.
But you have to do it maybe.
Yeah,
It's
I
important,
mean-
like fix the past.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. Tell me, please, there are some couple of serious questions that are important to everybody to understand.
Yeah.
Like, for example, primacy effect or, this primacy effect, human brain memorizes primacy facts like the every first date kiss, as we talked
Yes,
now.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
This phenomenon is very interesting by its details. Can you explain it? Because these fresh memories, scientists always saying that they fixed in the brain and
Yeah.
become some kind of, place where we always come back to feel ourselves happy. It's not like, important is to be happy every day.
Yeah.
But this first kiss, it's always happiest.
Yes.
This first date, it's always happiest.
Yeah.
Why it happens like this, Wendy?
Yeah. So let me just start by defining the primacy effect is that you tend, if you have a list of things to remember, you tend to remember the very first thing on the list. So why is that? And we can go back to first principles of how memory works. Memory is enhanced by things that they make sense. Repetition. If you repeat things over and over and over, you remember it. But novelty always is something that helps your memory become stronger. Why is that? It's an evolutionary strategy. We need to pay attention to the novel because it could be dangerous. So our whole brain is focused on something novel, a new person that you've never met before. You ignore all the people that you've seen before, but your eye always focuses on the new person.
But excitement, why it's always comes more, from the first kiss again,
Yeah.
from the first date, excitement is
Yeah.
completely different
Yeah.
than if we compare with the second kiss and second date.
Absolutely.
Why?
So that comes to yet another principle of what makes things memorable: emotional resonance. Emotional resonance can be a very positive emotional resonance, like that first kiss, that first romantic kiss, or it could be a very negative resonance, death in the family, all these negative things. Those emotional contents, whether if they're strong in any direction, really help memories form better, because we know that there is an area of the brain that processes those positive, negative emotions. It's called the amygdala. The amygdala is very strongly interconnected with the hippocampus, so that when the amygdala senses, it's best known for its threat, processing fearful, threatening situations, and it immediately puts that into a very, very long-term memory. Why? Because we need to remember those dangerous, threatening situations. But it turns out that a beautiful situation, the first kiss, the first time your baby is put into your arms,
Yeah.
very positive, also can stimulate the hippocampus to remember those events. So we always do. You'll agree with this. We remember the happiest and the
Yeah,
saddest
sure, yeah.
moments in our
Yeah.
lives, and
Yeah.
it's because of this emotional resonance.
Another thing, do physical exercises affect symptoms, evidence of autism?
Autism, that is a great question. There is, I would say, a handful of studies that have suggested that exercise could be beneficial for some aspects of autism. But it's frustrating because the studies are small. There's not very many subjects, autistic subjects in these studies. So it's very hard to make a definitive conclusion like, yes, if you have your child suffers from autism, get them into sports. I'm not confident enough to say that. I know that it's one of the many patient population groups that I'm very interested in exploring more deeply.
But there is hope.
There is hope, yes, absolutely. I mean, exercise is beneficial for, I know autism has motor difficulties and coordination difficulties. So even for that, it could be helpful. Stimulating movement that is more coordinated can help with one of these problems, but there's many other issues.
That you have to discover,
yes,
to understand.
exactly.
Is it?
Yeah.
Because it's important. I heard that maybe if your kid has an autism, it's better to push him to go to some kind of sport. But actually now I get it, that it's important to, to learn what the scientists finally will say, because you are still discovering.
Yeah, and there's also many different kinds and levels of autism. And so that's the problem with the small studies. What kind of autism did these 6 subjects in this study actually have? So it makes it even more difficult to interpret. Again, I think there is an interesting question there, but we don't have the answer to give, to the general public yet.
Tell me about this again, experiment of the rat neurogenesis, rat running in a wheel, as we talked, for a muscle loading.
Yes.
Research of memory improvement with the physical active animals. You said that experimented a lot on the impact of the physical activity on various areas of human brain.
Yes.
We are interested of details of this research. You did this research only with rats or other kind of animals.
Yeah.
And what's the final maybe 3 most important point that you get?
Yeah, so all the studies that I have done in my lab have been with people, not with rodents. I know the rodent literature very, very well. I have many friends and colleagues in that area. I find it fascinating. But all of my studies have been in people. And so the 3 take-home messages from my lab are that exercise can have an immediate positive effect on mood, on reaction time, on focus and attention, as well as decreasing stress. That's amazing. One thing that you can do, you don't have to have a gym membership to increase your exercise. This is a free thing. Immediate effects. They last between 10 minutes and at least 2 hours, depending on what you do. Second take-home message, that if you do this long-term, not just a single workout, but change and do regular physical activity so that you feel like you're pushing yourself, this is going to literally change the anatomy, physiology, and function of your brain. This is not a quick thing, but this is, of course it takes time for new cells to grow, for new synapses to grow, but with physical activity, you are getting strengthening of your prefrontal cortex and your hippocampus minimally. And then the third thing is that with long-term exercise will protect your brain from aging and incurable neurodegenerative diseases, including Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease.
I have to ask you, Wendy, how old are you?
I'm 53.
It's incredible. You know this. I think that people everywhere are telling you same thing. We can say that there is a real connection between activity and how, women look like.
Yeah.
Really?
And so I think the best, the evidence comes more from how much you exercise and how your brain works. Of course, I think there's a very strong connection between the body and the brain. You have a beautiful, healthy brain. It's gonna be radiated out for the outside. The physical activity is also going to make your body look good as well, and that's going to help your brain as well. So yes, there is absolutely a strong connection there.
Another interesting thing, the story of the Dr. Flukes. You remember it from the book? How it happens, how our memories and how our visual activities work.
Okay, so let me quickly tell the story. This is one of my most one of the teaching moments in my life that I'm most proud of. And so this was a course where I was trying to demonstrate the importance of memory, how memory works, why it's important. And so I started out in a traditional way. I gave some history, but then, unbeknownst to my students, I had a burlesque star who was also a graduate student in our program, and he danced under the name Dr. Flex. And I knew that he was a great makeup artist because I had seen his makeup. And I knew he was a burlesque artist. So I said, could you come in and just burst into the classroom and do a dance and make it really memorable and then go out? And then, I'm going to ask people whether, what they remember. And so he said yes, but I didn't see a dress rehearsal. I didn't know what he was going to do. Exactly. So, and I told him, surprise me. I told him somewhere in the first 10 minutes, just burst in so I wouldn't know, so I could pretend like I'm surprised. So he bursts in, and firstly, his head is shaved, and one side of his head has gold glitter all over his head. And one side of his mustache is also shaved, and his whole face is full of glitter. He has a white lab coat on, and he comes in, and then a graduate student turns on music. So we have music for him. And the students are like, oh my God, what's going on? So he comes in and he does like a silent play where he comes in and he takes a fire extinguisher and he takes his lab coat off, and then he strips down to gold booty shorts, and he's dancing right in front of me with gold booty shorts. And you should have seen the expression on these students' faces. They could not believe it. And I just stood there until he left. And so the music turned out and he left. And then I turned back to the students and I said, what makes things memorable? And as you said, I had a student way in the back, this is 120 students, who raised his hand for the very first time in that whole semester. And so, of course, I called on him and I said, okay, what makes things memorable? And he said, gold booty shorts. And I said, yes, that's right, it's novelty. The core concept there is something novel, something emotional. It was like made people feel uncomfortable because they didn't know how much he was going to take off, and it actually looked like he might go all the way. But he left it with these gold booty shorts. So it was a wonderful way to demonstrate what becomes memorable in a novel situation, what attracts their attention. And of course, I got the students to say the main point and not me, which was also memorable for them.
What's the lesson is? To be more active, to be more proactive, to be a little bit provoke?
No, the message was to understand how memory works. Novelty attracts your attention. If something is done in class that, if your professor has a fist fight with one of the students, are you going to remember that? Yes, you are, because it's novel. And we know this a little bit, but to actually demonstrate that is a wonderful way to introduce the concept of memory, which was the start of this little section that we were starting.
Can sports affect human brain, and what exact exercises are most effective? I asked you at the beginning, and I'm going to repeat this question.
Okay.
Is this something more effective that you can address to our audience and advise to our audience?
Yeah. So let me tell you what we know right now, and then I'll tell you my aspirations for what I want to know and the questions that we're asking in my lab. So here's what we know right now. The largest number of studies that have been done have supported the idea that aerobic exercise that increases your heart rate, is the best way to improve your brain. And then people say, oh, well, I do resistance training. How come that's not good? And the answer is, there are some studies that suggest that resistance training is good, and others that say that there was no effect. And it's unclear whether we just haven't found the right level of resistance training. We need more work there. So what we really need to do is compare different kinds of physical activity directly. Literally, no studies have done that. So one of the studies in my lab compares sitting with walking slowly, with kind of moderate level aerobic exercise, running on a treadmill, with shorter intervals of high intensity interval training where you're really getting your heart rate up. And we're just starting to gather the data there to ask what are the different effects of those different levels of activity immediately, but then what about 6 hours later? And so this is a key question. And of course, everybody wants to add in their own favorite activity. What about kickboxing? What about intensity? What about soccer? And that's going to come with more studies. But this is a critical question, and we don't know the answer to that level of detail. But what I can tell you is that anything that you do that gets your heart rate up is good. Stick with that for now, and I'll get back to you on the details later.
Okay, then I think maybe two last questions. How long does the effect of the cognitive development last?
You mean the cognitive development associated with exercise?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So that is a great question. And here I can tell you for sure, we have very little idea exactly how long it lasts. We're trying to first, all of the studies are about, let's have them work out for 8 weeks. What about 12 weeks? What about 15 weeks? Do we get an effect? And the answer is, it's easiest to see these effects after 3 months of 12, that is 12 weeks of physical activity. But nobody has asked, okay, now you're not going to work out anymore. How long does that last? My strong intuition is that if you stop working out after that 12 weeks, it's going to go back down at some point. Unclear. Probably, in the next month or so, you'll start seeing a diminution if you stop exercising at all. But that, you've highlighted yet another scientific question that we haven't been able to answer yet. There are broad things that we can say, but we're still working very hard to answer these details. It's a critical detail that you've just asked me about, but I can tell you that we do not know the answer to that.
Okay, and the last question, what are the brain functions that need minimum exercise? Because everybody, in our ages, what we want? We want to learn languages, but we are saying to ourselves, oh, I can't learn French anymore because now I'm in my 40s. I can't learn skiing in my 40s because I'm 40. And maybe it's some cliches in our brain, and how we should push our brain to exercise to change these cliches in our mind and to change ourselves, our bodies, our functions in real life.
So it's absolutely clear that there is a critical period for language when we are young, 5 to 7 years old, and it's easier to learn. That does not mean that it's impossible to learn language later. It just takes a little bit longer. So languages are absolutely learnable no matter what age. And we know the things that help. Immersion into that culture. Don't let yourself, go back to either Russian or English, whatever your native language is. And the principle here is that the human brain at any age has the capacity to learn. So it is completely a myth that, oh, I'm 40 now, I can't do this, I can't learn that. Everybody can learn. The brain is an amazing organ, and you give it enough time and the right environment, and it will learn.
Wendy, let me say thank you and tell me, what are you going to learn in next 10 years?
Gosh.
Do you have your plan, your own plan?
I do. I am going to reinvent myself as an entrepreneur. So I'm starting a new company right now to actually help people, individuals, figure out what is the optimum level of activity for you, not for people your age or your gender, but you, to maximize your brain function today and maximally protect your brain for the future. That is the company that I'm developing right now. So I hope in 5 years that I'll be able to come back and maybe speak at the business forum.
No. You have to come back much more sooner,
Okay.
I think. Come back here. You have to be with us because you have a lot of fans in Russia. And thank you again for your coming, for your time. Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Университет «Синергия». Колледж, высшее образование, второе высшее и магистратура. Заочно и дистанционно. Качественно и доступно. 17 факультетов. 110 программ. Оставьте заявку на обучение. synergy.ru